I'm not in that box.
No.
They're in the box.
Oh, you want to be here. The thing is, there's a camera. Hi, people. No, that's because left is right and right is left, yeah? So.
That's the back of me.
Okay.
No,
Yes, either you stand over there, okay, and then look at the screen.
No,
us.
it's not done. Okay, never mind. Forget it. There will be no one in the box.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for everyone for coming. I'm very excited to see the interest. I don't know if it's in the coffee or the coffee, but I'm going to assume it's both. I'm going to talk today about why good copy is good for business. And specifically, I want to get into some numbers. I've got a number of people in the room today about the ROI of Microcopy. ROI, for those who don't know, is return on investment. So how much you invest and how much you get for that investment. So hello, I'm Yael Ben-David. I'm the UX writer at Funbox, and most of what I do with my day is writing microcopy. What is microcopy? Microcopy and UX writing in general is new enough. They're new enough terms that a lot of people don't know, so I've developed a sort of cocktail party one-liner when people say, and people could be my mom, what do you do? I say when you see an app, when you open an app, the words you see on the screen, I write them.
Boom.
Okay. How do I get to the next slide? Okay. So let's talk a little bit more broadly. What is microcopy other than the words you see on the screen, and why do they matter? So microcopy is cheap, and I mean that in a good way. It's a big part of why the return on investment will be so high, because the investment tends to be low. So a great example is if you compare the cost of changing a string, changing one line in the code just to change the text versus developing a new solution, it's going to be much cheaper just to change the words. It's also everywhere, and this is important. Microcopy is in and out of the digital world, and it's really important to keep our eyes open and be inspired by microcopy that we see all over the place, like this sign, take my ex's stuff yard sale. It's all got to go just like him. This, I assume, is effective microcopy. I have confidence that this increased conversion. And it's powerful. Now, what was missing there, especially for the marketing folks, you'll notice there's no CTA. There's no call to action. It should finish with, save me, buy it, or something, right? And it's powerful. And I'm going to back up powerful with data in a little bit. Now, powerful could be for the good or for the bad. So it can cause a lot of return on investment. It can be a really great thing. It can also hurt your numbers badly if you get it wrong. So how do we do it right? Good microcopy both makes the product usable, that's like the basics, and delightful. So usable means I've come to this app in order to do something. Can I actually do it here? Is the thing functional? And the words are critical for allowing the person to achieve the job they've come to the app to do. The app, the yard sale, wherever it is that this microcopy is, it makes the tool functional. But beyond that, it can make it delightful, which is especially important in crowded spaces when you have a lot of competition and it seems like they all do the same thing. The app that's the most delightful to engage with is the one where people are going to stay and tell their friends about and bring their friends to, and that's the company that's going to grow. So delightful doesn't have to mean silly jokes. It just means a pleasant experience, a frictionless experience, one where you feel that it's just easy to do what you came there to do. You want the three sort of tenets of how to write good microcopy, you have to check yourself, are is it clear, is it concise, and is it helpful? So clear It's pretty clear. This is not the place to write poetry. It's not the place to show how many big words you know. It's the place to make it easy for the user to understand what they came to find out. Now, concise means keeping it short, but without losing the meaning. You still want it to be powerful. It's not brevity for the sake of brevity. It's short, but still powerful. And I have it highlighted in green here because I want to add a caveat that in the complex products spaces, so health products, fintech products like ours, concise in the sense of short is actually not always better. So that's because people are coming to us and as experts in sensitive areas, and they want to feel confident that we know what we're talking about. So if we don't talk enough, it might look like we don't know what we're talking about or have anything to say. This came up in a conversation. A content strategist at Facebook challenged me on a genetics product that I wrote. He said, wow, there is so much text. And I said, I know, but in user testing, we found that if there's not enough meat, then the users don't trust us and they don't participate. It was a health survey, and they don't participate in the survey, and they don't answer truthfully. And it has to be helpful. So a lot of times you might write something really clear, really concise, but it's not useful. So the messaging you might think the messaging is great, but it's not helping the user, it's just cluttering the design. And it's actually getting in their way. And of course, it needs to reflect the brand voice and tone. So the voice is the personality of the brand. A lot of people will simply use your brand because they connect to you. There's no shortage of examples of products that maybe are actually not as functioning or as reliable as other products, but because they're a pleasure to engage with, people do. So what is the personality? Is there chemistry between that segment, that cohort, that user base, and that product? And then tone is how you adjust to the context. So that means that if your personality might be more of an introvert or an extrovert, but even an introvert is going to be really excited that he's just opened his third franchise of his business, right? So you need to always keep your voice the same. You don't want your users to feel like they're interacting with someone with a personality disorder. At the same time, adjusting just as a human would to the situation. So here's a quick example of what I mean. This is the Android Pay app. And they started with their first draft. This is like the first onboarding screen. And they don't use onboarding. When we use onboarding, they mean sort of their first walkthrough. You just downloaded the app, you just installed it, you're opening it, and you need to set it up so you can use it. What you're meant to do here is connect it to a credit card. So it says pay with your phone in stores and enjoy quick checkout in apps. Okay, not clear, not concise, not particularly helpful, because I don't really know what I meant to do. By the end of their iterations, they ended up with this beautiful screen, everything you need to speed through checkout. Clear, concise, helpful, delightful. It fits their voice, it fits their tone. It's perfect, but they didn't stop there. Best practices weren't enough. Data is king. So this get started button wasn't actually their first iteration. They started with add card, because you're meant to add your credit card now. They wanted to manage expectations, which is the best practice. They wanted to, there was logic behind trying add card, but when they changed it to get started, 12% more users actually clicked on it. That's huge. If 12% of those, if that 12% didn't connect their credit card, they've done nothing. It doesn't matter that they've installed the app. And all that with 2 little words. Okay, you understand what it is. Now I'm going to tell you why it's hard to do right and why it needs to be invested in. So there are limitations. First of all, does it fit? Right? So I have dreams at night with designers saying, too much copy, right? There's always too much copy. I've never had a designer that give me more copy. You don't want to break the design. Now, breaking the design means our designers work really hard to make sure that we can fit on every kind of screen. We need the user experience to match the user where they are. So if their user is on a really old crafty phone, we're not going to then say, well, you don't deserve our app. We have to make it fit on every size screen. We have to take into consideration older users who are zoomed in, who might not see the scroll. There are so many parameters to the constraints, the size constraints of the design, and it does need to fit. Dev, how high is the effort? So we had this situation where we wanted to be really transparent with our users, really helpful, really clear, and we were going to tell them, the line product users, that if they drew before 12 p.m., in their time zone, and it was their time zone at that moment. They were going to get the money in 1 business day. And if they drew after the deadline, they would probably get it in 2 business days. And this was going to be just like tons of information, good information, helpful information at the right time, answering the questions they were asking themselves in that moment. And that became really complicated to develop. The payments team and the dashboard team, and they had to work together, and they had to reverse engineer the time zone, and it was a mess. So it wasn't worth it. And later on, I'll show you what we came up with instead that made everybody happy. The convention. So there's a saying that users spend 99.99999% of their time on other websites. So if you have to re-educate them, unless you're Apple, they're not going to use your stuff. So I might think I have a much snappier, better, more fabulous way to say something, but if the user is used to hearing that exact same concept in different words, it's not worth it, right? Maybe we should have gone with open house after all. Get your butt in here is what the sign says. Get your butt in here might sound motivational, it might sound edgy, but no one came to the open house because they're used to seeing open house. Compliance and legal. This is a big one at Funbox. Can we even say this? I could tick all the boxes and Sam sends me back to the drawing board. And time. This is a big part of my relationship with product. So product will say, listen, I know you're a writer, I know you're a creative, your work is never done. The masterpiece could always be fine-tuned, but I need you to work on something else now. And you know, I was almost begging a product manager once, but I can make it at least 10% better if you give me 2 days. He said, yeah, I have 3 features lined up for the same sprint. Please move on. And translation and localization. Excuse me. So again, this is in green because there's a caveat. This is not relevant at Funbox yet. I hope we'll add Spanish at a minimum in other countries eventually. They're different. Translation means the language. So is it in French? Is it in Spanish? Localization means, does it make sense for the market? So there are a few things you can do. So Slack has a very cool thing where they allow themselves to use idioms and things like that, like turns of phrase, puns, and I actually tweeted at them one time, how can you do that? What about translation? What about localization? And they said, we can afford it because we only translate into 3 languages, and we have localization teams, expert, making sure that we translate into the local pun, into the local version of that turn of phrase. Okay, so I looked at a company that didn't do that. They didn't have localization specialists. So what they did instead is I made sure the English stayed clean, stayed simple, and that way the translations department wouldn't run into those issues. Okay, it's hard, but it's worth it. It can increase engagement. Here are the numbers coming to show you how powerful it is. Again, I went back to Google. This is a Google search for a hotel. And at this point, you're very early on. You're just coming to peruse, coming to see what the availability is. Are there any options? You're not putting your credit card forward, right? You're just checking what's around. So you put in a check-in date, you put in a checkout date, and you want to see what your options are. It said book a room at the beginning, and it wasn't working very well. So they spoke to users, and they tried to understand, right? They were empathetic to their users, understanding where they were, putting themselves in their shoes, and understood that this was just too committal. They changed it to check availability because that seemed like less of a commitment, like the next step wasn't booking a room, and increased engagement by 17%. We had a very similar situation in our line product on the dashboard at Funbox, which I'm going to show you. But this is what I mean. You can take in, this is a digital example we took inspiration of. There are non-digital examples you can take inspiration of. But I said, you know, there's a saying, do it like Google, right? And we did the same thing. And this is an example of increasing engagement on write work. So this is a site that they looked at their users and they found out that these are writers who, when they get to this stage in the flow, want to write now. They have a sense of urgency. It's not the company coming with a marketing, salesy, increase a sense of urgency, get them to pay now. It's the other way around. The user wants urgency, and the interface has to keep up with that feeling. So they had this page where this checkout page, you put in your credit card details and everything, and you create an account. And what they found out was that if they made the button create account and get started, so that they understood now, immediately, this is your last step, money and go, it increased conversion by 31%. That's huge because this is a checkout page. That's a third more people paying money. And all it took was adding create account and get started. Now, this is a cool example because it shows a few things we've talked about. It's not as concise. They made the button bigger and it broke the design. But they did the research to show that it was worth it and it paid off big time. All right, I had to have a coffee example because we're having a copy and coffee session here. So I'm sure you all know that when you order a coffee at Starbucks, also Aroma does it, they ask you your name, they write your name on the cup. It's supposed to be more personal than calling out, the tall double skinny latte is ready. So this is about easing friction and increasing delight. We talked about what makes a delightful experience. So they write your name, it seems personal, it's nice. They also make a lot of mistakes. Imagine growing up in the States with the name Yael. I was just a Yael. You just can't be Yael in Starbucks. So that's going to happen everywhere. We're going to make mistakes. Our app's going to make mistakes. Every team's going to make mistakes. We'll charge the wrong amount of money one time. We'll debit on the wrong day. Anything can go wrong. It's tech. Nothing's perfect. And the way you handle those moments, that can win over a customer or can send them away. So someone came with a really tough name and the barista had two options. Gotten it wrong or written, I'm still going to spell your name horribly, horribly wrong. And that was a really cute way to handle the situation. So instead of this person being pissed or saying, oh, you narrow-minded racist, why can't you say, he put it on Instagram and got them more PR. There's a Danish e-commerce site that found that they were able to increase their click-through rate 17%. Again, this is a page before a checkout page. This is when they're filling their shopping cart. These are critical moments. This is e-commerce. This is finance, just like us. These are the critical moments where if we can push them one click farther, this is good for business. This is Microcopy making money. Oh, that was a nice alliteration. Microcopy making money. So I brought this example because this is a really cool idea I want to make sure I mention called content design. So what happened is, what you're doing here is you're buying like a package of stuff, like a bundle. And before you choose and this is to add it to your cart. But a content designer came around and said, well, it looks like people want to take a better look at what's in the cart, what's in the bundle before they choose that one for their cart, because there are different combinations. Now, had the designer come, or the product manager, with a wireframe to the writer and just said lorem ipsum, which this name kind of looks like lorem ipsum, and said fill in the blanks. We need a title, we need a subtitle. A lot of companies do this who don't have a UX writer. They say, well, we have marketing writers, that's what we have. We don't have a product writer. They're really busy doing marketing, but they really know English well, so we'll bring them wireframes and they'll write some words, and that's the best we can do. The difference between writing some words and content design is when they come in and say, let's add a text element. So you come to the designer and say, let's add just add something that didn't exist in the design before. I want words there. And they added the words C bundle, the review bundle, and increased click-through rate 17%. People were now putting things in their cart when they weren't before. We had the same almost exact situation here at Funbox when Sivana was working on the backy for T&H, right? We wanted we were creating a dashboard to increase the effectiveness of our collections. Super important for making money. And she came to me one day and she said, look, I'm working on this wireframe. Is my button text too long? And I said, well, yes. It's a very long button. But the way you can solve it isn't necessarily just by me looking for short words. Why don't you add, there were two buttons. I said, instead of essentially writing, do you want to pay the outstanding balance? Do you want to pay the overdue balance? Why don't we add a line? We'll add a question above, which balance do you want to pay? And then the buttons can be outstanding and overdue. So that's a content design approach that it's important to consider when you're looking for solutions. Why does this stuff work, right? So we just saw proof of Microcopy improving metrics, but why? what makes it powerful? So there are a lot of reasons I'm not going to cover in a short talk, but I want to focus on 3. It solves technical barriers. So we have a lot of technical barriers in our product. I mean, look at Yodlee. Yodlee is a nightmare unto itself. And we have this screen where we want users to connect their bank account, right? So that our data teams can go through and see their transaction history and help make a decision with FDB about how much credit to underwrite for. So they need to type in the routing number. But we know that a lot of people don't know what the routing number is or where to get it. And if we don't help them with that, they won't fill in the routing number. They'll never get past this screen. We'll never approve them for credit. They won't draw. And that's that's unfortunate. We've lost a potential customer and the revenue that comes with it. So we added this tooltip. Where's my routing number? Either print it on the bottom of your checks or in your online banking account. And now the user knows where to go and get the information. You haven't changed the functionality of the site. You haven't created a new feature. All you've done is remove the technical barrier that the user didn't know either what to do or where to find the info to input. This I know we've all had experience with. Any e-commerce site, when they ask for the CVV on the back of your credit card, there's always a little tooltip or a little icon showing you what they need by CVV. It also expresses empathy. That's a big part of why microcopy works, right? So I spoke about meeting the user where they are. So we're in the fintech space, and meeting the user where they are for us a lot of times means allaying their anxieties about their personal information, about identity theft, about data hacking. So we need to think, what are they thinking right now? If they were in front of me, if I was sitting with my aunt and helping her onboard, what questions would she be asking in this moment? And we know that when we're asking for bank credentials, they're thinking, whoa, 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 what are you doing with my bank credentials? Why do you need them? Whatever I wanted this credit for is not as important as making sure I keep my bank account secure. So we put this very sort of in-your-face element. It draws a lot of attention right in the middle of the modal that says we don't store or have access to your login credentials. We put it up there, and that's become, I think, PayPal and Amazon probably started it, and now it's standard. You don't put your credit card information anywhere without it saying, we'll keep it private. You don't put in your email address anymore without it saying, we promise not to spam you, right? These reassuring messages have become basic. And it motivates action. So for example, an empty state that encourages you to fill it in. Well, what do I mean by empty state? So let's say you go to a page in our app that shows you all of your outstanding draws. But there aren't any outstanding draws. So what you're going to see there is an empty state. So you're going to see a screen that says there are no draws here. Now you can write there are no draws here, or you can write there are no draws here, and some more text about go draw, and then there'll be draws here. And it's almost like tempting them, like, don't you want to fill it with draws? Okay, and which is good for us. All right, let's talk about us. Funbox, more Funbox examples. What have we done to leverage everything we just learned about? The draw pane. So I'll just to give some context for those less familiar with the product. This is what the user sees when they are deciding whether to take money in the line product, right? So you're either drawing against an invoice, or you're drawing like in an ATM configuration if you're a direct draw product. But basically, you're in your dashboard, you click on a button that you want to draw funds, and then you start making decisions about the terms for this one. So this person said, I want to draw $700. Okay, but how do you want to repay that? And then they, it's like picking different, payment plans. It's very simple. It's like if you're buying a card, you want to pay 30% up front, and then you'll have these monthly payments for 60 months, and you play around with the numbers until you find that balance between how much fees you can afford to pay overall versus how's your cash flow and how much you can afford to pay each month. So they can toggle between the 12-week and the 24-week, and they can see the numbers change and the dates change and see what works for them. And then when they find a plan they like, they can confirm it, and we'll send them the money. There are a lot of places users are getting held up on the screen. A lot of users are getting to this screen. They have the intent to draw. They're really interested in drawing. They might draw, repay us, and we'll make money, or they won't. And sales pointed out that a huge reason was because they just didn't understand the terms. Now that's a really bad excuse. Like if we're more expensive, fine, I can't do anything about that. But they just don't understand what we're explaining to them. That's a pretty crappy excuse for losing business. So we tried an ABC test. We had the control, and then we had an alternative where we only changed copy, and then there was a third option that we did a massive design overhaul, and we had a lot of fun refreshing the tableaus that Roy Tavari's team made for us, like how many users now, and we saw. And I just want to first draw your attention to the things that we changed in the text-only changes. We removed text here, right? Users didn't realize that they're going to be paying $62.82 each week in total for 12 weeks. They thought it was $62 in fees each week. That's really expensive. So they weren't drawing funds. So we changed the words, and then we added, for example, a tooltip. So this goes back to content design. We said we need more text. There just needs to be more. A tooltip is a good way to keep it concise while adding content because it's hidden behind a click, so whoever needs it has it, whoever doesn't need it, it's not in their way. Only changing microcopy increased in the G2 product. Those who drew in the first week by 3%, that's a lot of money. 3% may sound small, but that's a lot of money. That is users drawing funds that they will hopefully repay with interest that they wouldn't have otherwise simply because they didn't understand the terms. In B0, we did an interesting experiment and called users and asked them, okay, you didn't draw. Why not? Is it because you didn't understand the terms? And 5% fewer, that was the reason, right? So at first 20%, 1 in 5 users who didn't draw because they didn't understand the terms. Now we have 15% who didn't draw because they didn't understand the terms. These 15%, which means there are people, we didn't bring it down to 0. People still aren't drawing. But again, it could be because we're too expensive. It could be because they don't need the cash right now. They just wanted to check out our product for a rainy day. Microcopy can't solve everything, but we made a significant dent in losing users. All right, this is what I referred to before when I said with the Google example, with the book a room versus check availability. We have this draw funds button in the dashboard. So I also talked about this when I talked about the draw pane. This is the draw pane I mentioned before. To get to this draw pane, one click before, you're in your dashboard and you click on draw funds. And this is P0. So right now I'm talking about invoicing. So this is an invoice, somebody's invoice, and they want to draw funds against the invoice. Okay, so they click draw funds. They get to the draw pane. They can choose their plan, confirm the plan. We'll send the funds, and they'll have to start repaying. But what happened was draw funds looked really final. Draw funds, that's the same as like book a room. Like, whoa, 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 I'm not ready yet. And we saw a lot of users dropping off here. They weren't following through and actually drawing the funds. You know, they went through the whole process of onboarding, getting approved, and then just weren't using the product. And the reason was because this felt like a confirmation screen. Like this felt like purchase. This felt like, that's it, committing. And they weren't ready because they never saw the terms, which makes perfect sense. We also knew that in G2, the button doesn't say draw funds. For whatever reason, in G2, in the direct draw product, the button says review and confirm, and users weren't getting stuck. So we changed ours to review and draw. And we're not having the same problem anymore. You know, there was some talk around different solutions, more sort of comprehensive solutions. Should we add FAQs to the knowledge base? Should we educate on a landing page? This was really simple. It was really easy. It probably took a developer about 8 seconds and made a huge impact. SNP address fields. So again, when our users are onboarding, they have to fill in a form called the SIP form. Basic information about their business, the owner's name, the name of the business, etc., etc. Now they have to enter in 2 places an address. And the address, if I zoom in here, you can see in one place it's your business address. It said street address, no PO box, enter a location. And then if you add in your FICO, It's right, if we want to pull a personal credit score, they have to add a home address, not a PO box, enter a location. Now, the way this field works is we use a Google API, which means it's a way of validating the address. So they can't just fill in, I live in 8735 Mars Avenue, Jupiter. It has to be a real place. And so one of the ways we check that is you can't free type. You can't just type any address you want. You have to choose an address out of a drop-down that the Google API provides. So you start typing, a drop-down shows up, just like when you're doing a Google search, guessing what you've been, and then you have to choose from your options, and users didn't get it. So they were, why should they? There's nothing here telling them that that's what they're meant to do. So they were typing and typing, they were adding a PO box, they were adding a suite number, they were adding an apartment number, they were writing what in their opinion was their address, and they weren't able to continue to the next screen. So we said, okay, we can help with that. This was brought to our attention by the pay sales team. So first of all, we changed this to business address, no apartment, suite, or PO box. I didn't do anything fancy. We didn't use any cute jokes or lingo or, this is not jumping through hoops. We simply provided the information that wasn't there before, and it wasn't actually as simple to write as I'm making it sound because we had space constraints, design-wise. Okay, there were a few issues that we did have to overcome, but at the end of the day, this was a really simple way to explain better what we need. So we have business address, no apartment, suite, or PO box, and home address, no apartment, suite, or PO box. That already saved us a ton of errors. And we changed the placeholder text to search for your address. Don't just enter it. Search for it. That implies once you find it, choose it. And no one has gotten stuck since. Success. One last example. This is from before my time, but now I brought it to my attention, and I think it's a great example. Users get a pop-up on their dashboard encouraging them to sign up for SMS notifications. And if they want to, they can put in their phone number and hit subscribe. Now, what do you think would happen if you hit subscribe? Would you be subscribed, or would you need to do something else? Anyone?
Sounds like a trick question.
Wrong, you would not be subscribed. It is a trick question. You would have to do something else. What that else is obviously we have to verify the phone number. So we would send a message to that phone number, and then from there you would have to click on a link to subscribe. Nobody knew that because this is a room for really smart people, and you guys didn't assume that. And what happened was they thought they were done. So they ignored the text message and they were never subscribed. So that button was changed to text me to subscribe. You're not done yet. Text me and then continue to subscribe. And now people do. But wait, there's more, okay? Last thing. If you're not sold yet, I'm going to tell you why those are not the only numbers that matter. There are actually even more benefits than increasing click-through rates and engagement and delight. It's going to be good. Saving dev. I've mentioned it before, but I can't mention it enough. Dev is expensive. We love you, dev. You cost a lot of money, though. And research has shown that good UX can save 1/8 of dev's time fixing broken software. That's a lot of money. Now, that's UX altogether, not just UX writing, but we're a team. We go together. We're a package deal. And we had this problem on the payments tab of the dashboard of the Lime product where it just was a bad UX. The information was not presented in a way that users could understand what was going on with their payments history. And so we kept patching it. And Deb would add okay, we'll add this feature. Blah, blah, blah. Not at all this anything, they did the best they could with what they had. And then we said, let's just rewrite the thing in a way that makes sense. Decrease support tickets. Support's really busy and really cool. And they ain't got time for that. So if we explain it to the user in the first place, they'll be bothering them less. Increase retention and conversion. So all the numbers we've talked about until now have sort of been like a micro view of that. So we've talked about click-through rates and open rates and things like that. Those are those numbers are behaviors. But if you look at the overall what all those numbers add up to, it adds up to converting users to paying users and retention, keeping those users from going to the competition and continuing to pay us. Because we could be really great at acquisition and not great at retention, and then we're just in this eternal churn. You can do that with Microcopy. So all things considered, depending on the paper on the research you believe, you can get $2 to $100 return on $1 investment in UX. Now that's where you say boom. So again, this is UX as a whole, not just UX writing. But you notice here, I know it sounds like a big range, but the minimum is double your money. Who wouldn't bet on that? So join me. I think we promised in the flyer that I would explain how you can be a part of the magic. So here are some things that you can do. Look for bad copy and let me know when you find it. This came from Kelly in sales. She said, look, we have this checkout email that we send to users and it sucks. Can you rewrite it? So I did, and she's very happy. Ask questions and challenge me for a copy solution. I might be able to make your life easier. So I had this issue, it actually wasn't at this company, but at a different company. Dev ran into a problem, a Devy HTML problem I will never understand. And they said to me, basically, we need to write a list, but we can't make line breaks. We can. They're magicians, they can do anything. But we don't want to put in the effort it's going to take to make line breaks. Can you make this a list without line breaks? And I said, sure, add semicolons. So we did that instead. And you know, there are endless examples of being able to alleviate the pain of another department or solve somebody's challenge with copy in a at least as effective, much cheaper, easier, more comfortable way. Tell me about your pain, especially I'm looking at you support. Tell me about your pain, user-facing teams. I want to hear what is hard and I will help you fix it. This is an example support. I know you've been waiting for this example, Rebecca. This is an example that support brought to me in the draw pane. It used to say, funds will be sent today and are expected to arrive tomorrow, and then they wouldn't arrive tomorrow, and then the user would at best be confused and at worst be angry. This is why we tried to make the solution I talked about before, where we were gonna go all the way to the other end of the spectrum and be super explicit and say before 12 p.m. and after 12 p.m. and then it was a super smart string, because not only could it calculate when you were going to get it, it would show you when you were going to get it based on where you are and when you were logged in, and it was fabulous, and it was way too much work and not going to happen. So we went back to the drawing board and we said, we're not going to leave it the way it is, and we're not going to do the really high investment solution. We're going to come up with a copy solution. Instead of making the smart string smarter, because it used to calculate like it'll arrive in 1 day or 2 days or Wednesday or whatever based on upcoming holidays and things like that, instead of making that smart string smarter, we're going to make it dumber. And now there are no variables in this string anymore. It always says funds will be sent today and are expected to arrive within 2 business days. Compliance loved it because it gives ourselves more breathing room. They're probably going to get the funds in 1 day. But if we say within 2, it's truthful. We've managed their expectations. We're going to delight all those users who aren't expecting to get it for 2 days. So compliance loved it, support loved it, because no one's going to whine anymore. I didn't get it in 1 day because we didn't say they were going to get it in 1 day. Dev's happy. They don't have to maintain the code for this super duper smart string or the medium smart string. Dumb is much easier. Everybody's happy. As we say in Hebrew, shalom Yisrael. Keep your eyes open. So I showed you the sign from the garage sale. I showed you the cartoon about the open house. Learn from your world outside of work and even outside of the digital. My phone is filled with screenshots and shots from the mall and inspiration. Like, words are everywhere. And it's as fun to take pictures of the bad as it is to take pictures of the good. Here are a few examples. This is the subject line for an email from someone paying back a loan. You have a payment due soon. I like that. I mean, not that I have a payment due soon, but that it's simple, it's conversational, it's clear, it's not alarming, but still sounds important. Why don't we have a subject line like that? Let's get a subject line like that. It's very, I think it serves a lot of our purposes, and we haven't managed to say anything so simply and clearly. This is Medium as you're signing up for a blog. They feel maybe that their users feel that it's a bit too long of a process, so they have this screen almost there. Medium's really easy to sign up to compared to Yogi. Maybe we need more of those encouraging messages along the way. LinkedIn, something I think they do so well, is their registration form starts with the value proposition, connect to opportunity, and only after that talks about the practical. Join LinkedIn, now it's free. So ever since I saw that, I can never again look the same way at application forms that say apply. Like, don't tell me I need to apply first. First tell me what I'm going to get out of it. And just this line, connect opportunity, Greg, I think that's great for our rebranding. Like, let's just steal it. I didn't say that on the record. And this is from an app I actually have on my phone, Shoebox. It's a photo storage app. And they want to, and a really cool feature, the reason I keep it in addition to Google Photos is because they regularly send me emails with photos from this date, previous years. And they want to put that value prop front and center, so they say, relive your best moments. Okay, well, this actually showed up right after I had filled my phone with shots from a car accident. I was in an accident, and for insurance purposes, you take all these pictures. This was not my best moment that I wanted to relive. So sometimes this was a reminder to me that when I'm writing copy and we are talking about businesses that are not doing well all the time. Be sensitive. Think of all the edge cases. Which users might meet your copy in which headspaces, and write accordingly. So we know that Microcopy is all the little text across the screen. It's cheap, everywhere, and powerful. When done right, it is clear, probably concise, always helpful and delightful. It does require investment. There are limitations. It is work, but it always pays off. Thank you. Question?
You mentioned a few people raising flags about something they want to change, but do we have a process for detecting, looking at the funnel and spotting buttons that should be performing well, better than they are now, and raising automatic data-driven things to improve?
I know that when it comes to the way CTAs and buttons and open rates and things like that are working, when it comes to marketing emails, Allie's doing a lot of work on that. When it comes to in-product, I don't think we have anything automated. What we have is we set up specific experiments when we want to test something.
But you kind of need to know in advance what you want to.
Exactly, we need to know.
So if there's a draw now button that's not only 70% is working, and people are kind of not getting the right expectation or phrase or something, the product guys are.
Yeah, it's the product guys and it's the user-facing teams. So, for example, when the text wasn't working well in the drop pane, sales came and said, look, we're talking to users, we're calling our ANDs.
Yeah, but they didn't get the funnel. I'm talking about numbers. So that's on the product.
That's right. So they didn't have numbers, and they said, but can you make it better? Right. But no, we don't have an automated way to do that. Great. Anyone? Thanks.
Thank you.
Prezentacja to ja tylko.